You adopted your daughter, and I love your family, and I love your wife. Lori's awesome, and she's so gracious. I mean, I go to y'all's house there in Alabama, and it's a beautiful setting. It's a beautiful, you live in a retreat.
Love having you, and we got to get CJ there next.
I will see about that. We'll see if she can come. We don't know. Girls mess things up, dude. But your wife is so charming and so good, and she's just good. And she's a strong woman. She has to be to put up with you. But your daughter,
100%.
Your daughter, Sasha, how old was she when you adopted her? And I know you brought her out of a utopia, this wonderful place where we spend a lot of money. Called Ukraine.
Ukraine is a hellhole.
Yeah.
It really is. We adopted her just. She left the country on May Day. We celebrate every year with her May Day. Her birthday is May 19, so she was 10, almost 11 when we adopted her. But we celebrate with her both her birthday and May Day every year because we go. It was on this day, Sasha, in 2009 that you left that country. This was your liberation day, May 1st, and so she was a child, but. 10 years, she was abandoned at birth, and the first 10 years of her life were spent in 3 different Ukrainian orphanages. So while we can all say, gosh, she was a child, she spent a decade in hellish places, truly hellish places. Yeah,
experiencing abuse and just the of horrible things that you can imagine from something.
And she's the most lovely soul.
She is, and she's a beautiful girl inside and out, and married now,
happily married,
with a child,
little Abby Kate, their daughter, my granddaughter, who's just as cute and as happy as can be. And I was sitting and thinking when little Abby Kate is bouncing on my knee one day, how remarkable it was what the Lord had done because. See, what happens with these children is not only in the orphanage are they trafficked. I mean, they're sold, can be rented out. They're drugged and taken somewhere, for nefarious reasons. But then they're pushed out onto the street at 16. They have no education. They have no training.
So they're kicked out of the orphanage.
That's right. They're given
16.
just a little bit of money. And they often end up in the hands of the mafia. He uses the boys maybe for muscle or something like that. The girls, 60% of them end up in prostitution. And we think that maybe Sasha's biological mother may have been in the orphanage herself and then eventually had a child. And then, she didn't abort the child. We're very grateful for that. And but that it just perpetuates itself. You see that you end up on the street, you have a child, that child goes into an orphanage, and then it just keeps going. This sort of thing is very prevalent and very common. And yet here I am with Abby Kate thinking, Sasha is out from that, and now little Abigail is 2 steps out from that. Yeah. And here she is. She will grow up without any knowledge of any of these things, be so foreign to her. But that's because of the determination of her mother.
Yeah. I hear people all the time, because I've been very outspoken as a pro-life man who fights for those who don't have a voice, and that is the unborn. And so we get pushback, say, well, that's the problem with you conservatives. You don't care about them after they've been born. I was like, well, I'm the wrong tree to bark up, because I've started orphanages. We've done...
It's complete nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Evangelicals adopt more children than any other demographic.
100%.
By far.
And it's amazing to me that these who want to push back, and I said, listen, what about these products of rape? Well, I it's sad, it's tragic, and I'll tell you what, I know that 2 wrongs never make a right. So murder on top of the ignominy of rape never heals anybody. Now you're adding a guilty conscience on top of that. And so, to your point with your granddaughter now, I mean, just in a generation, so much healing happens, but so much is washed away. And that's what people take for granted. They think we're living for just this generation. We're living beyond ourselves. Whether you know it or not, you are a seed that's planted. Now, it may not bear fruit. It might be a crappy seed. I hope that we choose to live our lives in such a way that the seed planting comes out and bears good fruit. But in just one generation, it's amazing how much can be washed away.
It's absolutely incredible by God's grace, God's goodness in my life, in the life of my children, Sasha's life, our grandchildren. It's absolutely amazing to see what can happen there when small steps of faith, are taken. And even that process of adoption, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, Chad, the government itself really doesn't want to see the adoption take place. So a lot of pressure is applied. The federal government allows them. There's money to be had. It's a business. But at the lower level, it's kind of embarrassing, because it's a reminder that they're a third world country. And so part of the process of adoption means you have to go before a judge.
Yeah.
And Sasha, at 10 years old, had to stand before this judge in this courtroom by herself while the judge is saying to her very, very leading questions. Are you sure you want to be adopted? Do you know these people? You'll never be able to come back again. They don't speak English there. And she was trying to frighten her. And Sasha, and one of the boldest things, maybe the boldest thing I've ever seen, he just kept saying da, 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 which is yes, yes, yes in Russian. Do you want to be adopted? Da. Do you know that they speak English in that country? Da. Do you know you can't come back? Da. And she, Sasha, just as bold as brass, would not be intimidated by that judge. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the sophistication of here's this legal mind, this woman who's doing this, and here she is, just a 10-year-old. No one is standing with her. She's standing by herself in front of the judge who's trying to pressure her to say no. How incredible is that?
Yeah, and based off of, and guys, you got to watch the podcast episode. Where can people find the podcast?
They can find Ideas Have Consequences, Larry Alex Taunton. They can find that on YouTube. They can find it on my Twitter, at Larry Taunton.
And this podcast is you've been doing that for a while, but this podcast is really blowing up, and I'm proud to see that.
I appreciate it.
I love this format that you're doing with this podcast. But the episode you did last week?
Just last week.
Powerful. Everybody needs to go download, stream, and listen to this.
It was hard.
Story.
I was so proud of Sasha because it was hard for her to do that podcast, but she wanted to do it. Yeah, I mean, imagine I went to see Sound of Freedom with her.
Yeah.
So her fine husband, Dalton, is sitting on one side of her, and I'm sitting on the other, and we're both kind of watching her as all this is taking place, because I thought this might really trigger some trauma for her. These memories, we have kind of a rule in our household. We don't ask Sasha questions. We let her reveal what she wants to ask, what she wants to tell us. Nothing more. I don't want to delve there. And but she felt so strongly about that film, so strongly about the issues, that she wanted to speak about them. And Sasha's not a polished speaker, and that's part of what makes her a very powerful spokesperson, because if you watch that podcast, you can tell that it's costing her something to relive this and to tell her story. And she says, Dad, I need you to carry it. I need you to carry the podcast. And then just ask me some questions, I'll answer them. And she's just beautiful in the way that she goes through that and the way she does that.